Thank you so much for joining today, and welcome to the Office 36 or Microsoft 365 Security Hands-On Lab. We're really excited to walk you through some different security concepts and show you some of the tools available to build a better and more sophisticated security posture. It's really important. Microsoft's stack of products is great out of the box, but there are definitely things that you can do to further secure and improve that security score, which is one of the things we'll be talking about today. My name is Katie Petty, and I'm the Cloud Solutions Executive for RyanTech Cloud Services. One of our pillars is to focus on user education, showing you how things can be done. We can always do it for you if that's your style, just be like, hey, RyanTech, do the things. But if you want us to show you a few things similar to what Andreas will be showing you today, that is what we are all about. And our mission today is really to get you to understand, the how, the why, and the reason behind these sets of security tools. So I'll go ahead and just do a quick little introduction. Here we go. Share. See my screen okay?
Okay.
Good. All right. So we are RyanTech. One of the things that makes RyanTech unique in this universe of Microsoft partners is that we practice what we preach. We kind of took an entire cannonball into the cloud back, I think it was 2006 or 2007. We didn't dip our toes in, we fell right in. And through doing that, you'll see we kind of found out what pain points there can be experienced. And we really kind of wanted to make sure that our approach is helping to make sure that our customers steer clear of those, get through those okay, or avoid them altogether. We practice what we preach. We are 100% in the cloud. We use the full stack of security products by Microsoft. And that is exactly what we help facilitate for our customers as well. There are several types of Microsoft partners out there. A CSP, or a cloud solution provider, is what RyanTech is. And we're a tier 1, which means we don't work through any distributors. We work directly with Microsoft. CSP has some responsibilities. So they're responsible for handling billing, support, helping to migrate into the cloud, doing custom development, training. We even have more than a handful of customers where we've helped kind of train their security staff to get familiar with Microsoft 365. So we are designed to be an all-in-one, one-stop shop to help you consolidate as much as we possibly can with one bill, one stack of products, and one line of support and development. As I mentioned, because we kind of did a cannonball into the cloud, we did find that there are some potential pain points there. We use that experience to make sure that any stop or pain point that maybe anybody is experiencing while adopting to the cloud, migrating to the cloud, or even trying to build in the cloud or improve your security posture. If there was something that we needed, we hired it in-house. So we don't even have to go outside of the bounds of RyanTech to get you what you need. The big way that we do this, of course, I mentioned we handle your billing, we handle your licensing, but we also provide support. Support is required. That's part of the type of partner that we are. Microsoft requires CSP to provide support. And we've really kind of doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on our support. A huge area of our support is security. We, for example, maybe you don't have the best security posture, or maybe you have a pretty good security posture, but you still, somebody still clicks on a bad link. I mean, we're all human. So if you are to get hacked, our team will help kick that hacker out, look for and revert any changes that hacker may have made, and then work with you, whether it's from improving your security posture, making some changes, enabling MFA, looking at your security score, all good things that Andreas will get into a little bit later. Or maybe it's just a little bit of user education, right? We also provide consulting. So whether you are like, hey, maybe I should check out these RyanTech people, and you have a couple of questions. Consulting is free when you're checking out our company, and as the customer, consulting is free. So especially when we get into conversations, like I've mentioned, custom development, improving your security posture, moving into Azure, you get a full picture of what that will look like in the cloud before we ever ask you to pay for anything. So consulting is free, and it's a very, very important part of getting to know and getting to trust the cloud. And we want to help you through that. We want to make sure we move at your pace and make sure you're completely comfortable before, just charging ahead with something. If you're like, I don't know if I should do this, but sure, we want to make sure you're trusting in it as much as we are. As I mentioned, we do administration assistance. If you want us to kind of help your administration team out and show you how to do different things, we can help you. We want to teach a man or a woman to phish. If you want us to do it for you, that's fine. You have access to do all the same things that we do as your support and licensing partner. There's really only one thing we ask you to do through us 100% of the time, and that's add and remove licenses. But hey, we also handle your billing, so we make that easy too. We are great with migrations. We have a ton of experience with it. We have an incredible support and migration team. And we really help you through it. We do a majority of the work. We have it very dialed in. So when it comes to looking at doing migrations, if you still have some things you're looking to migrate into the cloud, or if you're not quite into the cloud, you're just looking at it, feel free to reach out for a free consultation. And we can talk to you about what that looks like, how long it will take, and different things like that. And then, we do a lot of custom development. It's one of our favorite things to do. Again, we have developers in-house, so you don't have to worry about going to different companies or jumping from here to here to here to here. You have one frame of contact and communication, and we do it all. I mean, give us a
Love
it. And then kind of another thing is we've learned to do what's right, not necessarily what is popular. Every single business has a different set of needs. They have different ideas. They have different sizes of businesses, types of businesses. And so it's allowed us to really dive into providing a very, very custom approach and handheld approach. One of the big things is we move at your pace. We see our clients as an extension of us. We want you to be educated in this. We want you to know what's out there. We want you to feel like it's easy to talk about what you want to accomplish in the cloud, and especially to get there. And so that's, I think that's probably my favorite thing about working for this company. I've been doing this for 12 years. I've been with RyanTech for about 6 or 7 years. I'm never going to leave. I'm going to die with this company. But
we have a gamer on our hands. I love it, Katie. We have a great question for you.
Sure.
Actually, Prakash is asking about, discovering some weaknesses inside of Microsoft 365. Sure. And just quickly, right before we get into the demo, I think just a small plug, I think for your services here would probably be a great answer, because I was going to tell them Secure Score is a great way, but I think you also have a really good tool specifically for threat detection and response. So love to just give you a there.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll see at the end of this, you will be offered a free consultation. We can look at your security. We can look at how you're positioned in Microsoft Cloud. On the topic of the type of development we do, at the end of this webinar, I will tell you guys a little bit about our customized product. It's called Cloud Protect. It is a proprietary product that we built in the cloud. It lives on your cloud. It's in the cloud, Microsoft's cloud. Microsoft Cloud is all we do. So go figure. But you'll see it's a really proactive approach at security. Not just waiting to see if you're hacked and if you're getting spam emails sent out to your entire book of customers, but seeing actual attempts, weaknesses across the entire cloud stack in Microsoft. So I think that that's something I'm really excited to get to once Andreas masters your entire, gets all your cloud secure, shows you at least I know we're kind of scraping the surface a little bit, but once Andreas does his thing and you guys get to play around in the workshop, I'm really excited to tell you about that and kind of blow your minds. We're more than talk. We're beyond that. So I get to show you a little bit about our customization. And then, just really quickly as well, we really focus on kind of 3 pillars, which are migration. Most of you are probably migrated some into the cloud or looking at it. Once you're in the cloud, looking at how we can adopt the cloud further and consolidate different things, even building custom things in the cloud, and then specifically protecting the cloud. I know that that's why you guys are here today. You want to see how to further protect your cloud. What is Microsoft Secure Score? Why enable MFA? So with that, I'd like to introduce our facilitator for today's workshop, Andreas. We are so lucky to have him here, you guys. It's incredible. He's the current Azure Immersion workshop facilitator for Microsoft US and Canada. So without further ado, Andreas.
I appreciate that, Katie. Thank you very much for the introduction. That's actually a great segue, I think. We're talking about protecting the cloud. We're doing what's called a CIE today. Okay. And so I want this to be as interactive, as fun as we can make it. And so one of the things that we're going to be doing during the session is sending out some polls. Okay, so just to kind of get us started, I'm going to go ahead and send out a poll here around, what percentage of current businesses you think today are attacked by security threats? And I was having a conversation with Katie actually about this right before we jumped on the call, talking about, when she's working with customers, the amount of threats that she identifies in that process is honestly a little astonishing, a little scary, but more importantly, I think for all of us, something that we need to really keep our eyes on. And as I assume everybody, passed this test, it looks like about, 99% of us realize 75% of people are probably, I'd honestly probably say it's higher than 75%. That's a estimate. Obviously, you can never get a hard number there. But the point is, this is why a lot of people, when we're talking about security, they talk more about a when and not an if. And so, it's about proactive response and proactive detection. And so today we're going to be talking about, some foundational principles inside of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, everything from identity and access management to mobile device management, application management, all the way up ultimately to threat detection and response, which I think is absolutely critical. So hang tight with us. I sent a link here in the chat window for everybody. I'm going to go ahead and repost this. Okay, this is a link to launch the demo, and I'll go ahead and share my screen really quickly. We're going to be doing this demo probably in about 20 to 30 minutes. I got some other things, just kind of visuals that I want to share with you first that I think are absolutely critical in terms of just understanding some foundational principles first. And then we're going to get into this demo where we'll walk hand in hand a little bit deeper into some of the different tools that you can leverage as customers of Microsoft 365. Okay. Now, you'll notice here inside of this demo, what is it doing? Well, it's redirecting you to a page. You can go ahead and type your name in. Again, my name is Andres, and you go ahead and select one of these blue launch persona icons. When you go ahead and you do that, what's going to happen is you're going to open up an actual screen here. So you see, I just launched the Megan account. And you'll notice as I'm doing this, it's actually opening up a virtual machine where I have access here to this demo environment for a Microsoft 365 subscription. So, in the meantime, while I'm getting situated here, make sure that you get that set up. And if at any point in time you're having problems or you're running into any issues with this, feel free to let me know, and I'm happy to help you along that journey. Now, one of the things that I pretty much start every single conversation with, and this is a non-starter for me, is multi-factor authentication. Okay, now the reason that, I focus on this first is because we are in, a time of business that is very different from what you saw even just 2-3 years ago. With everything that's happened, I'll actually give you a statistic here. I was reading a report, a few days ago, 600% increase in cybercrime due to the pandemic. Okay. Now, unfortunately, that's a topic that I was hoping we wouldn't have to continue to be talking about till this day, but it is. And, inherently, there's a lot of reasons why, right? People are working from home. People are working from different devices. People are working from different networks. And if you know anything about security, you know that, businesses essentially operate as a team. And what I mean by that is every single member of that business is responsible to make sure that they hold up security for the organization. Because if one person falters, one person clicks on a bad link, one person, lets their credentials be accessed by the wrong individual, and now we are in a position where, we've got a serious problem. And so, it needs to be taken seriously. It needs to be done in a manner that is cohesive, but is also very effective from, both the IT perspective and the end user perspective, right? We want to have balance there because if we can have balance, we can have a very succinct plan to target and manage these types of threats. Now, first things first, I'll send out a poll here, just like I did previously, about MFA. And, I will tell you one of the things that I am happy to see is that up until this time, MFA has gone ahead and increased significantly in terms of adoption. Now, again, I'm just going to take a small moment here to address this. And the reason for that is because I think this is really the bedrock of your security. Okay. For any of us here, and it seems like a couple of us are saying no, and that's totally fine. But this is, hopefully the last warning that you'll hear from somebody. It just needs to happen, okay? I get a lot of complaints. Hey, my workers don't like it. The adoption is running into any issues. Well, again, that's why I brought RyanTech, and we're here, to be that resource to help guide you through this process. But, hands down, there's absolutely no reason for you not to have this integrated inside of your environment. In this current day and age of security, it's not about building barriers anymore, right? It's not about having one way to access this information and basically being able to be at the front door constantly. We are now having doors opening all across us, right? And the reason I'm trying to give you that visual is we really need to focus on the identity. Right. That's why you hear this concept of identity and access management and why it's such a popular topic when people are approaching security. And, really, in my opinion, the primary reason for that is, if we understand who's using what, from what device, from what location, and we can be confident in that individual, then, we've solved the problem of, the bad actor for the most part. Now, on top of that, right, there might be some other considerations, right? Internal, malicious activities. But again, that's why you then have some more complex and sophisticated services that help alert you when anomalies are taking place. So again, I just want to start with that overarching conversation. When you think about MFA, I got a question about passwords and how they should work. I think one of the other things you can be potentially targeting is a passwordless environment. One of the things that has gotten really popular recently has been the advent of keys and the advent of devices that actually allow you to sign in without needing a password in the first place. And the more that we can do that, the more that we can focus on different ways of accessing information without requiring credentials, we are putting ourselves in the best position to succeed. If you didn't know, okay, here's a statistic that should hopefully scare you. 80% of breaches are caused by lost or stolen credentials. Something as simple as a phishing attack that you may have experienced previously. A lot of us, I'm sure, either know somebody or have personally been affected by one of these types of campaigns. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on today. But my whole point being here, if I know that 4 out of 5 attacks are happening because of lost or stolen credentials, if I can make credentials only one step of the authentication process, then I can mitigate the vast majority of threats that occur inside of my network. And I can go ahead and invest in some more complex tools to help me identify and manage threats that may have gotten past that first level of defense. So again, first foundation, let's manage our identities. Let's have MFA in place. And then let's start thinking about some other things that might be of interest. One of those topics, and I'll go ahead and just quickly share my screen here in a moment, is going to be around how we're managing mobile devices, how we're managing mobile applications. Okay, and so I'll go ahead and I'll start here with this first example. Okay, and this is going to be around how we're actually accessing information that's not necessarily on a device that may be fully approved by the business. Okay, because not every device was created equally, right? So if I go ahead and just share this, right, the example here is we've got somebody before work, right? And, we've all been there before. We wake up early in the morning, we roll out of bed, and let's say we want to go ahead and access our email. Okay, we want to go ahead and take a look at maybe what some of our friends some of our colleagues have been messaging us about. What I think people don't, fully conceptualize though, is how critical it is to manage the data that's living on these devices. These devices are not controlled by the business, and so we can't put locks in place on the device itself. So we need to be a little bit more, creative as to how we put rules in place to manage this. Okay, there's a couple of different options that you have, really, in my opinion. Number one, you can think about putting some conditional access policies in place to manage the way that people can interact, in fact, with this data, right? So for example, let's say, you've got somebody here who's on their phone. You then go ahead and try and access Outlook. But before you can do that, we have a conditional access policy in place that tells us, hey, you actually need to go ahead and authenticate yourself one more time through biometrics in order for you to access this data. What happens if, for example, you leave your phone, on a table? I was hearing a specific story actually 2 sessions ago about how they actually, one of my colleagues was at the airport and they saw a lot of people just leaving their laptops open, at the airport as they went to the bathroom. That's a security concern, right? And so we can think about putting some more controls in place like this on devices that are not managed necessarily by the business. We can help put as many barriers in place in order to protect this. Joseph, I see your question about the Andres persona. That was just my name. That's why I inputted it. Go ahead and put your name, and you can choose whichever persona you like. It does not matter, just to make that clear. Now, this is one of the ways, right, that we're protecting data on personal devices. On top of that, right, we might want to think about some of the ways that maybe we're protecting data when it comes to lost or stolen devices or people who are leaving the organization, right? If that's the case, then, if we're using a service like Intune that can manage devices in the cloud, then we should be able to go ahead and actually wipe all that data remotely from the device, right? And so as we take advantage of some of these different features in the cloud that have really elevated our abilities, we're going to be able to protect ourselves against some of those complex attacks. Now, that example that I was just giving you guys was a personal device on a corporate application. What if we flip that on its head? Okay, what if we say, okay, instead of a personal device with a corporate application, how are we actually managing personal applications on corporate devices? Okay, now one of the things that I think all of us should be thinking about, and this goes into play when we're talking about building that strategy and building that constant path for improvement, is how are we managing applications? Again, I was reading some information on apps that you actually find on the App Store, like the Google App Store, the Apple App Store. Over 90% of malware is present on those mobile applications, on those app stores, and meaning that we can't trust these applications to be secure. And so we want to be able to operate from the lens of zero trust, right? You've probably heard the concept zero trust with Microsoft before, where we're focused primarily on not taking unnecessary risks, organizing our business from a security perspective, where we're at a point that anything and everything that we do is solely for the purpose of supporting the business. And unless it's supporting the business, there's no reason for us to do it, right? So in this example, right, we've got somebody who's at lunch, let's say, and they're on their, again, business approved device. But what they're actually doing is they're trying to access a personal application. And so, let's say they're going on vacation, they want to go ahead and find a good deal. And so they come here to the App Store, they go ahead and search, they type in, Trivago, I'm going to select Trivago as the app, and then I'm going to go ahead and actually download this to my device. Now, what's going to happen, assuming you've put the right controls and the right things in place here through your Microsoft 365 subscription, is that you're going to be able to manage this in a way that's going to protect the information that's living on that corporate device. Think about the risk if you went ahead and you opened up your corporate device and you handed it to a random person on the street. Because essentially that's what you're potentially doing when you're allowing individuals in the business to download a bunch of different applications that have no use for you, right? You should have a list of specific applications that you allow inside the organization. And if they don't fit that list, then guess what? Go ahead and have that be blocked by your system administrator, right? Put those policies in place, because if we're not proactive in the way that we're trying to, protect ourselves from, bad actors in the marketplace, then we're going to be put in a position where we're trying to work from behind, and we never want to be there. When we start going to threat detection, I'll talk about some other unfortunate statistics when it comes to breaches and how long it typically takes individuals to actually even realize that they've been breached in the first place. It's a scary thing to think about, but ultimately, I think it's important for us to have that conversation so that we can start developing a plan of action to protect our businesses and our information from these types of threats. So with that being said, that was my quick little intro first. I just wanted to set the stage, talk about, identity management, talk about application and device management, how that really interacts inside of Microsoft 365. That is a very, good foundational understanding of it, but, it can be super complex. So I just wanted to pause here. I'd love to get some feedback from the group, see if anybody's got any questions or any thoughts. And Katie, if you've got any, examples of, different ways you worked with customers around these topics, would love to get your input on, the different things you've covered with them as well. So go ahead and open it up to everybody here.
Sure. Any volunteers? I know that at RyanTech, with how involved we are with our customers, we certainly have many examples of people unfortunately getting hacked, people lurking in the background waiting to pounce. I know we mentioned Cloud Protect. We'll go over that a little bit later on, but I'd say about 2.5 out of every 5 installations of Cloud Protect, we do find somebody who lurking in the background. They've already been hacked and somebody's just kind of waiting to pounce. So it is a pretty scary thing. That's one of the things that kind of drove us to, create something that could be proactive in that way, because, especially with COVID, we were also seeing an uptick in the amount of customers that were getting breached. We have a lot of different types of customers. Primarily, we focus on small to medium-sized businesses. But with how things have been changing, especially during COVID, how many companies are looking to bring your own device, absolutely conditional access policies and increasing your security it's mandatory. It really is. If you're not proactive, then the hackers will be.
Absolutely. Anybody have any questions? Again, I want this to be as interactive as we can make it. I've been on plenty of sessions where people just want to sit in the background. They want to listen. I totally respect that. But I will tell you, if you've got a question, the more questions that you ask, the more likely somebody else has a similar question. How do you protect access to GUIDs and APIs? So that, Prakash, is probably a question that we'd have to really dive in deeper to, right? Like, What specifically are you talking about? In your experience, what are you trying to protect against in the first place, right? Now we're starting to get a little more technical. I don't necessarily want to make this a super technical lab just because I don't really think I have the benchmark to have that really technical conversation. I love talking about the capabilities and the overarching tools that we can leverage. But if you want to have a more technical conversation, we can absolutely set that up and we can walk through that. So, but good question. I totally understand it. I'll talk about some of the different tools for similar type of concepts today. But any other questions?
You can always reach out to RyanTech for a free consultation, just kind of a free, let's look at your security, let's look at what you want to protect and talk about how we can protect it. So I'm certainly happy to talk about that with you following today's call.
What role does our company play? So good question. I think, Katie kind of mentioned this a little earlier, right? It really is going to depend on what you want to do, right? Some organizations like to be a little bit more hands-on. They want to have more control over all the different aspects of what they're doing when it comes to security. But RyanTech is more than happy to manage that for you as well. It's going to come down to what you prefer. I will tell you though, it's not necessarily your line of business. It's not something you're doing every day. I always recommend customers work with people who know what they're doing. That's why I like bringing on best partners in the country. That's what we do. So, that's my thoughts. But good question. With that being said, though, we're talking about taking steps. We're talking about building. We're talking about getting better every day. And, one of the things that I think you should all be using inside of your organization as a really good benchmark is what Microsoft calls Secure Score. Would love to get some feedback if anybody's ever used this previously. Have you ever heard about it? Let me know in the chat window. Is this something that you and your organization is using on a consistent basis? If you're not, I really think you're throwing some opportunity out. And the reason I say that is because of where this information is coming from, okay? When you're dealing with a company like Microsoft, you're dealing with a lot of information, okay? And what I mean by that is, Microsoft is a global organization, right? We're getting reach across the entire world. And the way I like to explain it to people is that it operates like a brain trust, right? When it interacts with a new type of malware, a new type of threat, all of those learnings are shared with the rest of the user base that is on Microsoft 365. I really think that's one of the main benefits behind having a subscription-based service is that you're constantly getting the best version of those tools, right? And so when you get those updates, you get those requests to improve some of your different systems, take them, right? You're taking learnings from across the world to try and get better. Prakash asking, what type of certification does your company hold and people working on my project? So definitely all the certifications that you need, everything that has to do with security, that's going to be the main thing that RyanTech is going to be focusing on. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in just a sec. And especially if you have very specific questions, we can dive in a little bit deeper one-on-one. Now, specifically on Secure Score, this is where we can actually jump into the demo. So if you have the demo open, I'm going to go ahead and actually share my screen here. Okay, just to kind of show you why I like this tool. Okay, so you should hopefully be able to see my screen. This is the demo environment for the lab today. And what I want you to do is just go ahead and double click here on the Edge browser. Okay, this is the browser inside of the demo. Now we're going to be going over a couple different things. Okay, the first thing I'm going to touch on here is the Defender portal, and then I'm going to go over the compliance portal. I saw a question about that. I think those are both critical tools that are going to be very helpful for your business. Okay, number one, this Defender portal is going to be security.microsoft.com. Yeah, I'll go ahead and post this here in the general chat window as well. Security.microsoft.com. So if you opened up the browser and hopefully you signed in with your account, you'll know because you'll have the face here in the top right. You should then be able to open up this portal where you have access to a view of what M365 looks like. I'll give everybody 30 seconds to get situated here. But while everybody's getting ready, I'll just give you a little bit of brief background here. This Defender portal is going to be critical. And the reason for that is you're going to be managing a lot of different things from here. Everything from understanding some of the threats that are, potentially hampering your business, things with email and collaboration. You're going to be able to manage identities, your MDM policies, mobile application policies like we were talking about previously. And you're also going to have some really cool things like attack simulation training, which I'll briefly mention here later on in the session. Now, for the purposes of this specific portion, I was talking about Secure Score. Okay, right here on the left-hand side, you see Secure Score. It'd be great if you went ahead and actually just selected on this. And this way you can kind of get a feel for this. You can see it and hopefully understand why I'm such a big fan, right? My colleagues like to actually refer to this as the answers to the test, right? And I think that's a very logical way to approach it, where, as we're thinking about the complexity of our security, how can we start identifying the next best project to work on, the next best activity to do in order to secure the business as much as possible? And, this is what Secure Score was ultimately intended to do, right? If I go here to my improvement actions, feel free to go ahead and select on this for me. I want you to take a look here, because, this is going to show you a list from most important to least important of the different steps that you can take to go ahead and protect your business as much as possible, right? So for example, if I look here in my #1 rank, no surprise, multi-factor authentication for admin roles, right? You can actually select on it. And when you select on this, you're going to be able to see a description of what this is, right? So it's telling me why is MFA important, and why specifically for admins, like I was mentioning earlier, right? Can severely compromise your business if one of these admins gets hacked. And so this is why, requiring that second form of authentication here for these individuals in the business is so critical. You're going to get an action plan. You're going to get an idea of what this is impacting, what product is involved in this, and then ultimately what users are going to be impacted with this actual update, right? If you want to try and go ahead and actually do an implementation yourself, you even have some steps here that you can follow to try and actually roll this out for your business. So suffice to say, right, this is going to be soup to nuts, a really good example of some of the different ways that you can improve your posture when it comes to security. On top of that, right, and again, this is what I'm recommending, is you're going to have a history, right? You're going to be able to track your trajectory, because none of the things that I'm going to talk about today are going to be overnight fixes, okay? I think individually on a case-by-case basis, you need to figure out what is the best step to take today, what is the best step to take tomorrow, and how am I going to get there, right? And so I think over time, month by month, quarter by quarter, year by year, we want to be able to see an upward trajectory here, and we want to be able to track our progress and understand the different steps we've been taking. Because if you know anything about security, you know that from day to day, things change, and we need to stay on top of what we're doing. We cannot stay static, right? That's why, leading tools like threat detection advancements are so critical for security in this day and age. And then finally, just kind of a cool little piece here. If you wanted to see how you stack up against your competitors, why not take a look, right? This is the beauty. This is the use case here that I'm hopefully trying to show you as to why this is something you should be leveraging. We've been talking about having conversations. We've been talking about having, one-on-one consultations. If this is something that you want a little bit more help with, and you want us to actually walk you through this process, we can do that as well. So if you're interested, we can do an assessment on Secure Score. We can do an assessment on whatever you like. I think what's important, though, is that you understand, exactly what you're trying to accomplish. Am I trying to make a focus here for identity-driven security? Am I worried about the devices that my business is using? Am I worried about potential threats that I may be missing on a day-to-day basis, right? We need to have those actionable steps to understand where we may be able to take some leaps when it comes to improving our security posture. So again, critical thing to take a look at here, just so that we understand exactly how things are functioning inside the organization. So let me pause there. Katie, I'd love to bring you back in here for just a second, because one of the biggest things I actually get asked all the time is, you know, what's a great secure score? And I have my thoughts on it. I don't know if you've got any thoughts that you're willing to share, just because I always get this question. So I'm curious if you know, you had to answer that before as well.
Sure. I mean, your secure score, so you'll see you have this score out of a potential this score. When you're not using that much of Microsoft's you know, platform of products, if you maybe just have Exchange Online licenses or you have Microsoft 365 Business Basic, you'll have a lower total number. If you have Microsoft 365 E5, like everyone in RyanTech does, then that's going to be out of like 700, right? So I would say a good, like, you know, an okay secure score would be meeting at least half of the total score. I would say is like at a minimum, let's look at your secure score and see what we can do to posture you better to get you at least to there. You know, not that many people have a perfect secure score. I would say some of them may be like GCC high clients that have everything from A to Z implemented would have closer to that full number. But at the very least, you know, try to get halfway. I think that that's an okay place to be. Better, much better than, you know, being a 10th or a 15th of what the total number is.
Yeah. Great. And I'm glad we're kind of on a similar page. I usually tell people, yeah, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60% is a solid score. You know, anything above that, you're doing a really good job. Good question actually here. David asked, what determines organizations like yours? You know, Microsoft, like I mentioned, global reach, right? So this is going to be industry specific. So if you're in financial services, it's going to go ahead and actually do a basically an overview of, okay, based on the financial service organizations we service, this is the average score in that category. So it's going to be your competitors, you know, the people that you're fighting for business, right? And I always tell people, hey, you know, why not be able to tell your customers, you know, I have double the security that the typical organization in my industry has. You know, I would love to be able to say that. So anyway, just a funny side note there. Any other questions, you guys? I just want to pause, make sure I'm not leaving anybody behind. Any other questions? Any other concerns you might have? Okay. Anything comes up, you guys let me know. Okay. So that's secure score. That's really fun stuff. Now, I saw some of the questions in the chat previously about compliance, and I think that's a very, very relevant question, okay? How does compliance come into play with M365? What are some of the things that M365 can help me with? Now, typically when we're talking about compliance, one of the biggest things that you need to be thinking about, data loss prevention, right? How can I make sure that I'm not leaking sensitive information into the marketplace? And, you know, there's actually an entire portal dedicated to this inside of your Microsoft 365 subscription. And this is going to be compliance.microsoft.com, unless I totally botched this, but I believe that's right. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so let me go ahead and type that in the chat window here. Compliance.microsoft.com. And inside of your demo, okay, go ahead and open this page up if you wouldn't mind, and you'll be able to actually take a look at this as I'm sharing this on my screen. Now, what is this? What's the purpose of this? Well, inside of your M365 subscription, you're going to have a laundry list of different capabilities that you can enable for security, right? This is why I'm doing an overview here. I'm trying to show you the breadth of what's possible. Now, specifically with compliance, it's going to differ depending on your organization, right? What industry are you in? Are you regulated by the government for X, Y, and Z? We need to figure out what works best. Now, when it comes to compliance, you've actually got what's called a compliance manager. So you'll notice it looks a little similar to Secure Score. It's actually kind of cool. It's a little less well known, but you know, similar to Secure Score, where you've got a list of different improvement actions and different steps that you can take when it comes to compliance. you actually have the ability to do that here as well, right? So it doesn't look like there's any data available here in the demo just yet, but you can kind of see the overview here, right? I've got improvement actions for my compliance concerns. I've got solutions to help solve these issues. I've got assessments that I can run to figure out where I might have some gaps and some weaknesses. And I've even got some templates here, which are really awesome. So, let's say, for example, I have to follow EU GDPR compliance, right? And I kind of want to get an understanding of what Microsoft recommends. Well, I can actually open this up and have a templated version for my environment ready to go and ready to use. And if you use this in tandem with something like Autopilot, you can pre-configure accounts for every single person in your organization. So, I'm getting beyond what I'm talking about here, but the point is, if you work with the people that can walk you through this process, it can really make it a simple, seamless experience for you. The problem is a lot of people just don't understand how to use this. That's where Katie comes in. She's the expert there. That's what I give her to do.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of people are kind of under the I don't know, a misconception that just, Microsoft 365, for example, has the tools that you need to become HIPAA compliant, but just having it in place doesn't mean you're HIPAA compliant. You still have to implement certain things and do certain things. I know as a part of setting up our customers, or if they're already in Office 365 and they want to become a customer to receive our support and all of the great things that we offer, we walk them through the security and compliance tenant and make a set of recommendations that they can either say, yes, I want that, or no, I don't. So for me, everything you're talking to is extremely, extremely important. And it's one of the things that we put in front of our clients front and center.
Yeah. And I'll give you a very specific example with an actual exercise that we can do here today around, what Katie's talking about. For example, when we're talking about Teams, we're talking about SharePoint. I don't know if you guys know this. I bring it up during every lab because most people don't really think this far. Okay. And that's around how people are accessing those documents. Encryption is team-based. Okay. Now, I'm not trying to say it's bad. It absolutely works. Do not, misinterpret what I'm trying to say. My point is, though, that there is loopholes if you don't play your cards right. Okay. And so we want to try and minimize those issues as much as possible. So let's say me and Katie are on the same team in SharePoint or in Teams, right? And we've got sensitive information that's living inside of that file environment. Well, Phil, he's looking to access the data, but he's not invited. Okay. He doesn't see it. He can't interact with it. Awesome. What happens when Katie loses her cool? Phil just keeps asking a million questions and she's just tired of it. So she downloads the document and she sends it over to him outside of the Teams environment. Well, now we've got a situation where we have lost data. DLP policies did not work. They were leaked because, we circumvented what was in place. And, this is the type of things you should be thinking through, most especially with very, very sensitive information. Okay. We don't want to lock down everything. And the main reason for that is now the end user can't do their job. Everybody gets frustrated and you lose adoption, right? You got to have that balance like I was talking about at the beginning. But when we're talking about socials, we're talking about banking information, we're talking about addresses, driver's license information, super, super important things. We have to put steps in place. Okay. One of the things you could think about, and what I wanted to walk you through here, on the left-hand side, you see where it says information protection. Okay. One of the things that you can do to help mitigate these types of problems, and this is just an example here in M365, right, is classification. All right. How are we classifying the data so that we're not relying on the encryption at the team level? We're actually relying on the encryption at the file level, meaning regardless of where that document is living, if it's living on the device, if it's living in the cloud, if it's living on-prem, we are going to have the ability to lock it down to those specific users. That is how we're protecting our information, and that's how we're taking appropriate steps to do so. So I'm just going to quickly walk through this, okay? Feel free to follow along with me if you like. You'll notice on the left-hand side, I selected information protection. I selected labels, and then I went ahead and actually created a label. Okay, so if I wanted to give this a name, let's say I went ahead and this is for social security number protection. Okay, that is the specific reason that we're creating this policy in the first place. And so I'm just going to go ahead and copy that name, and I'm going to copy this into the description. I'll also go ahead and put -Megan because that's the name of my demo, and this way I don't get confused. If you guys are following along with me, feel free to do the same thing for yourselves. Okay, so this is going to be about social security number protection. Right now, inside of these labels, what you'll notice is that this can be for your files and for your emails, but you can also extend this to your Teams environments, to your SharePoint environments, to your Microsoft 365 groups. Do you have databases that are hosting this type of information? Works just the same. You just have to go ahead and take the steps to enable this feature, right? And so hopefully what you'll notice is that M365 is the canvas. You're just going to need to make sure that you paint it appropriately, right? Take those steps and configure this environment to best fit your needs. And so as I go next here, then I need to decide, what am I going to do here with this label? Specifically, like I mentioned, we are protecting data that is living in these files so that the file using AI and using automation is automatically classifying, encrypting, and securing the data that's living on that document, right? So I'm going to go ahead and select both of these, because not only do I want to encrypt it, I also want to mark it, right? So that if any individual who does have access is interacting with that document, we want to make sure we take as many precautionary steps as possible. So I'm going to do both. Okay. And then I have to configure the encryption, right? If I'm going to make this work for me, I got to tell it how I want it to work for me. And so that's how we're doing as we're creating this label, right? So for example, how long do I want them to have access? Do I want them to have access offline? Do I want to assign permissions now or let other users decide? I think you should be very stringent with this, right? We're doing this in the first place in order to be more secure and not less secure. So I would select your group of people. Let's say, for example, this is banking information. Then maybe the only people who have access to this once the label is applied is the accounting department and nobody else, right? And so I'd come in here, I'd say assign permissions. I'd add those specific users, those specific groups, and now they're going to be enabled on that policy, right? In this case, I'll just select Megan just to kind of show you here as the account. So I'll attach Megan, I'll click add, and I'll save that. So that now, again, what have I just done? Once this label goes live, Megan will now be the only user who will be able to access this type of information. Then I'm going to click next. Okay. Do I want to mark this content? Absolutely. Right? If Megan is in there, although she's the only one that has access to this, maybe she needs to be reminded every time she gets in that she needs to be very careful with how she manages this data, right? So, let's say I want to add a watermark, right? And I want to go ahead and say in all caps across the middle of the screen, I want it to say confidential, right? Because we've got social security numbers here. If this leaks, absolute mayhem, right? So we're going to say this is confidential. We're going to have this in 100-point font. You're not going to be able to miss this, right? Super, super awesome. And then lastly, most importantly, the thing that I want you to pay attention to the most, auto labeling, okay? I was having a conversation in a previous session with somebody who mentioned they were using labels. And actually, if you're using a label today, let me know in the chat window. I would love to hear how you're using it today. A lot of people mentioned, bank account information. Some others mentioned PII. There's different ways of doing this, but point being, one of the users told me, yeah, I'm actually having individual people label it themselves whenever they come across this information. No. Okay. And the reason I say no is we're doing this in the first place to minimize human error. People make mistakes. There is absolutely bad actors who are, causing the majority of problems when it comes to security, but a very, significant portion of security incidents actually occur because of internal mistakes. I believe when they actually polled corporate leaders in different organizations, over 50% of them admitted to sending sensitive and confidential information to the wrong individual. And so, this is something that unfortunately is just a natural cause of doing business. And so for me, I want to automate and I want to optimize things with artificial intelligence as much as possible. And so in this case, we're absolutely making this auto label. And now we just need to teach it what we're looking for, right? We're going to add a condition that says the content contains some type of sensitive information, right? So let's say we want to go ahead and scroll all the way down here just so you can kind of see this. What type of sensitive information do we have here? Well, we have US bank account, US passport, or US social security numbers, for example, right? And so now what this is saying is that whenever a document is, identified to have a social on it, this is automatically going to be encrypted. Megan is going to be the only person who has access to this. And if we need to make any changes, she will be the only user with those rights. And so we go all the way through here. We review these settings, and then we can go ahead and actually finish creating this label, right? And so that's a very simple walkthrough, a very simple example of how, evaluating your potential next steps and saying, okay, you know what? My next goal is I want to go ahead and secure social security number information. Well, great. So now let's think about how we're classifying data, how we're potentially securing it in the different places that it lives, and taking the steps to make sure it doesn't get in the hands of the wrong individual, right? Again, we have a lot of different options in front of us, and it's all ultimately going to be around how we use them. Now, you'll notice when the label was created, we're actually not finished yet, because we actually need to click on publish, okay? Because now we need to send it live. And I can select, based on the different ones that I'm doing, like for example, this one right here with Megan, I can add it now. I could then say, okay, what users will be impacted? In this case, you might say the entire organization, right? Every single individual. I'll just add Megan here just to keep it super simple. You go next. Definitely want a track record, right? I want to be able to see if people are removing labels, what's the reason. I want that in writing so that I can always have a history and be able to go back. I also want users to automatically apply this label, right? So I'm going to select both, and I'm going to go ahead and finish here all the way to the end and submit this. So I've created the label. I've now submitted this to my M365 environment. And now we have a policy that was just created. And so what's going to happen is now in 24 hours max, usually it's a little less than that, just depends on how many things have to be screened. You're going to have this policy live that essentially states anytime a social is present anywhere inside of a device that is tied to the business in some manner, this is going to go ahead and actually locking that information automatically. Really awesome. And it just shows you, the capabilities of integrating some of this automation, some of this AI into the fabric of your security posture. Really important and something that I think, all of us could definitely benefit from. So let me pause there. I've got one more topic I can get through here before I pass it over to Katie, but before we move there, wondering if you guys have any questions. Am I going too fast? Have I totally lost you? Do you guys have any concerns about maybe some of the things that I've been talking about? Love to have a conversation on, any thoughts that you might have on, could it be sensitivity labels? Could be multi-factor authentication? Could be mobile application or mobile device management? Anybody have any thoughts or anything they're concerned about? In the specific case of SSN, how do you get through false positive? Great question, Jerry. So, when you're creating these labels, it's never going to be perfect. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. You want to make it as good as possible. Now, there's different thought processes behind how you do that. I can't go back, but there was one of the pages where I actually selected the social, and it said low confidence, medium confidence, high confidence. And that is basically going to determine how stringent you want it to be. Now, when you do get a false positive, it's not like it's going to happen every single time, right? You got a very specific number that you're looking for. But if you've got a row of 9 numbers connected together, it's going to assume this is potentially a social, right? And so I would rather be more careful than less careful, and then be able to easily remove them at the click of a button. but again, have the track record of why that was done. Because I think it is more risky, in my opinion, Jerry, to have somebody manually put these rules on and then risk, not having it actually applied versus having one or two extras that are unnecessary. That's just my personal opinion. I'd rather err on the side of caution, because typically, especially with something like socials, you shouldn't have more than a couple people dealing with that type of information anyways in the first place. So, that's kind of my thoughts on it. I don't know, Katie, if you've got any other feedback there, but that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, I say a good rule of thumb is always better safe than sorry. Having a false positive that may cost you a little bit of time, or that user a little bit of time, is so much easier to deal with than having a social leaked, or sharing information that wasn't supposed to be shared. So it does happen occasionally, like Andrea said, but it's definitely worth it to have in place.
Yeah, agreed. Prior to social, many counties in the United States use 9-digit number for property records that still exist today. Right. So, maybe if you deal a lot with, those types of informations that's causing you a lot of problems, you can build out custom solutions, right? So you can look for very specific versions of that social that might differentiate from those specific records. Again, it's always a case-by-case basis. It's never going to be a one-size-fits-all, and I understand your concerns, Jerry. But again, I'm going to stick by my point. I'd rather be safe than sorry, just because I've just seen the unfortunate side of it getting leaked, and that is hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars for the business. And I promise you, you talk to anybody in leadership, that's going to be a bigger concern. So yeah, it's kind of a tough conversation.
Yeah, and I think this, what Andreas is showing today, is a overall blanketed approach across the tenant, regardless of who you are. Like he said, though, you can customize your approach to these different things. So if the blanketed approach doesn't work, there's always another way. Microsoft wants you safe, and they give you a way to do it.
Yeah, I love it. All right. So one last topic before I pass it over to Katie here, just to talk about something I'm really excited about. Phishing. Okay, I don't think we can have this conversation without talking about phishing. And if you remember at the very beginning of the session, I mentioned over 80% of potential threats are actually encountered because of lost or stolen credentials. Okay, what's one of the most popular ways to actually get these credentials? Phishing attacks. Okay, and the reason for that is they're simple, they're scalable, and it's something that, again, you're relying on, human error, right? It's something that all of us may have encountered before. I'll go ahead and send out a poll. Have you guys ever been phished before? I'll tell you, some people don't like to mention it, and I totally get that, but typically you ask this, it's a very high percentage of the group. It's something that we all have to deal with. And that's why, I used to send out a polling question previously, a few months back, about, have you trained your staff on phishing? That's always 100%. It is almost always 100%, because, people identify it's a big deal. Right. And so what are some of the things in Microsoft that, you can help put in place against phishing? Well, number one, I'll just quickly mention just kind of an idea of how Microsoft operates with links. I think this is really, really cool, really, really important. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly go to office.com. And I'm just going to show you an example that they have here of a phishing attack and some of the things that actually take place. Okay. Number one, I'd say most importantly here, if you follow along with me, it's inside of your Outlook. You select on Outlook, and you select here on this email from supposedly Alex Wilbur. Okay, it says important statement of work. Now, there's two things that I'm going to mention. I mean, we could go over all the different reasons that this looks wrong, but I'm sure you guys have all had that conversation. I want to talk about two specific things. Okay, number one is going to be called what's 0-hour auto purge, and the second is what's going to be called safe links. Okay, the 0-hour auto purge, what is this? Well, what Microsoft is actually doing is it's evaluating every email that's coming into the inbox. Okay, if there's malware detected on that email, it's automatically going to go ahead and delete every single attachment on the email before it reaches the user. Okay. And so this is how we can protect against a vast majority of threats that are coming into our inbox. However, a lot of phishing attacks have multiple ways of hurting your business, right? They might have some malware in an attachment, and they may also have a link that redirects somebody where they can go ahead and actually input their credentials. And so in that case, right, we have what are called Microsoft safe links. And I just want to show you a visual here that you can actually take a look at, because I think this is really, really valuable to everybody. What you'll notice is that even if a user were to go ahead and select on that link, because, Zap took place, there was malware detected, Microsoft automatically redirects this link to this safe link, right? It lets the user know, hey, this might not be safe. Please do not go. You're putting your company at risk. And so this is how we're trying to be proactive and, help people help themselves. Because again, a lot of these phishing attacks are because people are tired. They're not paying attention. They're stressed. They got a lot of different things on their mind, and they're not really looking out for the health of their business, right? Now, on top of that, when you think about some of the different ways that you might be able to practice, and you might be able to go ahead and actually go through the motions of maybe finding out who might be a potential risk vector for the business, we have what are called attack simulation training. This is some really, really cool stuff. Hopefully you guys have tried this out. I'd love to hear, if anybody today has actually interacted with something like this. I think this is one of the ways that, again, we're identifying the individuals and the people who may be potential risks. And as we're going through this process, as we're evaluating, right, we can then take steps to train them. We can take steps to, figure out how to do this. Yeah, so Joseph, this is going to be inside of the Defender Suite. So security.microsoft.com. Okay. And then on the left-hand side under email and collaboration, you should be able to see attack simulation training. And what you're gonna be able to do is run some actual benign attacks, right? This actually was in the news, I believe, January of this year, because eBay did one of these to their employees. They told them they were all getting a bonus, and so a big portion of the employee base actually opened it up and they put their credentials because they wanted to get their money. But that's how they get you. That is how they get you, right? It takes one person, and you can think about how scary that is, that you get one person and then, they have the right level of access. We're now in trouble. And so that's why beyond all these different proactive, capabilities of M365 that I've been talking about, there's also a second layer to this, right? We also need to have the ability to manage threats and identify threats when they're trying to impact our organization. I was reading the cost of a data breach report from IBM a couple months back. One of the craziest statistics they have here. On average, it takes organizations about 191 days to identify data breaches. 191 days, right? Healthcare was actually the worst industry that took around 8 months to identify when they've been breached. And I think this gives credence to what Katie was talking about. A lot of people are impacted. They just don't necessarily know it just yet. And so beyond just this proactive approach that I'm talking about, you also need to be thinking about detection tools, right? And so I'll send this poll out here, and then I'll go ahead and pass this over to Katie, because the question that, she's hopefully going to be able to answer here and kind of give you an idea of why this is such an important thing to think through is, how are we detecting and responding and managing these types of threats in our organization? If we don't have a plan of action, we don't have some type of automated response with AI integrations, we're not going to be able to keep up. My colleagues talk about how our hands and our feet and our minds, we can't keep up by ourselves anymore. We need tools, we need automation, we need technology to help support us. And, Katie, that's why I'm excited to pass this over to you. I think you're gonna do a great job and kind of showcase one of the different options that they have that fits and builds right into M365. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much. So one of the things I've kind of been hinting at is a proprietary product that we built. It's called RyanTech Cloud Protect. I'll go ahead and share my screen so you can just see a little bit about this. But basically, especially during COVID and prior to it, we were seeing a huge uptick in the amount of our clients that were experiencing breaches. As I mentioned, a part of our support is to help with breach recovery and to kind of put these security items in front of people to review, but they do have the option to not implement MFA or not look at what the compliance portal has to offer. And so this is kind of the sole reason that we created a product that allows us to have a proactive approach, not just waiting to see if and when you're hacked. I'd say, probably, I know I mentioned this before, probably every 2 to 3 out of 5 implementations of Cloud Protect, we find somebody lurking in the background, which matches up exactly with that IBM security report. Generally, they lurk and lurk and lurk and look for the right moment to pounce. And then they do their thing. And then, everything hits the fan. So basically what Cloud Protect is it lives fully inside of the cloud. It uses AI, conditional access policies, talking about, basically tying in everything that was talked about on this demo. It puts it in front of you and then shows you how much at risk you are and also what areas you should look to improve first. There's tons of options of how you can be proactive in implementing different security techniques and compliance items and higher license levels. But based on what's happening in your portal, based on how you specifically are being targeted as a business, what should you do first? Who has your back? So Cloud Protect, this is an incredible product and it monitors not just login activity, but we can also tie this into what's happening in Azure. Your SharePoint site, who's accessing what files, who is attempting to access the file that they don't have access to. Maybe somebody tried to share it out and even if they have the link, if they shared it appropriately, or if somebody just happened to grab a link from an email because they were lurking, it'll show you if somebody's trying to access that document or access that link or access that account. And so this is an incredible tool. I will tell you that since we've, when we implement this, and since we have implemented it for the customers who choose to have it, those customers have not experienced any breaches, which is huge. It also automatically watches your tenant for any, it learns what typical activity looks like and it alerts to atypical activity. So it will tell you medium and high level alerts. As you work through these alerts and as our team reaches out to you and says, hey, this user tried to log in from this IP address. Is this normal? Or they may be just logging in from home. Or maybe our team sees that, this worker was in Utah, 5 seconds ago, and they just tried to log in from India. Obviously, that's going to allow us to be a lot more proactive than just waiting for somebody to click on a bad link and finding out you're hacked when the hacker decides to pounce. You'll see in a couple of slides, we provide you with a beautiful dashboard. You can view it on your phone, on your Mac, on your PC, any device, because obviously we want you to have as much control and access over your environment as we possibly can do for you. So I'll show you what the dashboard looks like and what that monthly security overview looks like as well. And we can even, send you a text if that's your bread and butter. If you don't want to have to worry, maybe you check your emails once a day or twice a day, but you check your text all the time. We can get this information in front of you as quickly as possible, however matters for you. This, out of the box, Cloud Protect is great. We can also do additional automation. A couple of examples of this that we've done for our customers are we have a few dealer groups where they have multiple locations. What they chose to do is they did not want anybody logging in outside of a structured set of IP addresses. If they try to log in outside of that, they're alerted to that. And RyanTech goes into action or has already set up the policies to make sure that if they try to log in outside of this IP address, they don't get access. So you can really get an idea of which user is being erratic, maybe which user is trying to log in on their phone or log in wherever outside of what they know and have been told they're supposed to be doing. Another option for automation is, and you'll see with the next slide, an example of the dashboard. It kind of gives you an overall tenant-wide, all of your users' view of what's happening, who's trying to reset their password, who's trying to log in, who's trying to access this document. We had one company who was kind of unsure about a couple of their employees, and they wanted to see it as well as an overall tenant-wide, user-wide view. They wanted to see the dashboard by user so that they could really kind of drill in and in one pane, see everything that that user was doing. So bottom line is, we can customize this. If it lives in Microsoft's cloud, we can apply Cloud Protect to it. And whether you decide to look at the dashboard, whether you decide to read the security alerts that we send monthly, our team is monitoring this and on top of it all the time. We watch it 24/7. Again, you have access to see a live dashboard that is always up to date, and we do send you notifications about a general overview of what's happening. But however involved you decide to be or not to be, that we'll still be monitoring what's happening in your tenant, especially based on the specifications that you provide. So I'll just show you an example of what this dashboard looks like. Across the top, very simple. Tells you, hey, maybe you should kind of do a review of these two accounts, knock, knock, knock. These people are being a little suspicious. There's a lot of atypical activity happening specifically with these two accounts. And also on the right on the top, you can see, these passwords, these two people, their passwords have been all over the place. They've been logging in from everywhere. I would maybe look at, resetting these two individuals' passwords. So it will, it just kind of gives you an overview. How many suspicious logins, how many admin changes were done in the tenant that this tool reviewed. And it'll actually show you as well how many breaches were prevented, which is huge. It gives you a timeline throughout the month. You'll see on the top here, you can, last 30 days, you can customize that. Obviously, it'll go back as long as when the tool was implemented, but you can see screenshot, a snapshot rather by day, by month, 6 months to a year, just to kind of really figure out where your risks lie. How many devices are people using? How many people are bringing their own devices, if that's something you allow? And by getting this snapshot, it will allow us to work with you, or we can kind of consult with you and, teach a man to fish on different areas that you can really secure your tenant, implement conditional access policies, to make sure that, you're not just waiting for a hack to happen. This is the way that we provided for you to actually be proactive. And then down on the bottom, you'll see there are different tabs across the top for different types of activity. And you can actually see by user, by device, what was happening. Michael Shea down at the bottom, he tried to do a self-service password reset, but it wasn't enabled for this user. You maybe would have never known that, and maybe that's not a big deal. But otherwise, you wouldn't have known. So this, again, all in one snapshot, just really gives you a good idea. And I'll also show you an example of the monthly email we send. You can see that we reference your secure score. So that is always something that we try to keep in front of you. How can we help build up your security posture and make you stay even more secure? Also, how many times have you, asked your admin or tried to look up and down and count the amount of lines? How many licensed users do you even have? Are there users on there that maybe quit? Maybe you have 50 people after COVID and you're like, oh my gosh, I have 165 licensed users. How much money am I wasting? And who still has an account? You'd be surprised how much that does happen. But again, something we find very important, and we want to make sure that you feel very in control of your environment and where you're choosing to house your data and what access you're providing to these people. And then, like I said, this goes out once every 30 days. It'll give you a snapshot of how many breaches were prevented, how many admin changes are going on every month, how many suspicious logins there were, and overall, how many sign-ins in a month, and how many of these sign-ins were audited and alerted to, especially if they were atypical. So this is definitely something that we find a huge amount of value in. We're happy to help you recover from a breach, right? If you're a client, that happens, that's what we do. No problem, no additional cost outside of just the license payment and our very, very minimal support payment. But we don't want to spend our time just helping recover from breaches. We want to spend our time increasing your security posture, building within Office 365. We want to continue to help you, implement it further. So this is just our way of making sure to keep looking upward and onward. There are ways to even hack and bypass MFA, clone a SIM card, hack the phone provider. There are all sorts of different ways. So you can never be secure enough. And this is our way of really showing how, where your weaknesses lie and what maybe you need to look at configuring first. So we're more than happy to give you a free security consultation. And anybody who would like to, we can also look at giving you a free trial of Cloud Protect for 30 days. And I think you'll be surprised what it finds.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Katie. I think that was a great explanation. It's a great opportunity. That's how I see it. Why not take, the chance to figure out where you might have some holes inside of your security program.
Yeah.
Everybody doesn't want to address a problem until it actually comes up. But much to what you were talking about, Katie, I mean, if you can be proactive, if you can be ahead, I think that's how you minimize the damage that might result from something like this. So,
oh yeah.
With that being said, for what it's worth, we talked about some great things today. We went over a very nice overview of everything that you can do in M365 to a certain degree, but it was not customized, right, by any means, right? I mean, everything that you saw and I talked about today and we shared were services that can absolutely be more aligned effectively with what you're looking to do. And I think that's probably the main theme that I want to explain here is that Microsoft has the tools. You're just going to have to figure out how to implement those tools to best fit what you're looking to do. So we're here to help. We're here to support what you're doing today. And hopefully, we can be somebody that you can rely on when it comes to security. So with that being said, didn't want to leave 5 minutes here for any Q&A that you guys might have. If you guys have specific questions, if you have concerns, if you want further explanation on any of the topics we talked about, I will go ahead and open up the floor here for 5 minutes. If not, I totally understand as well. Feel free to take off. It's fine. But, more than anything, I really do appreciate the time and hope you guys learned something. So any questions?
Sure. I do just want to say, I'll go ahead and drop a link for our page for Cloud Protect if you want to read more about it. And if you want to sign up to just talk about it, learn about it a little bit more. And then I will also drop my LinkedIn profile URL in as well. So please feel free to reach out to me. I'm an open book. But yes, please, questions. Let's talk about this. Great demo.
So you always got to let the silence go like a little long, just to to appreciate it. Hope you liked it, brother. Thank you, Desta. Really appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Well, I usually tell people if there's no questions, you usually did either a really good job or a really poor job. It's one of the two. Actually, I did just get something in Q&A. Hold on, let me see this. Great presentation. I appreciate it. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you very much. Hopefully you guys learned something. That is the goal. We are here for you guys. We're here to educate you as much as you can. And I think that's how you really empower people to get better at what they do. So I want to say thank you. Doesn't seem like there's any questions. I'll stick along here just for another minute in case there is. But, with that being said, do just want to say thank you and, have a great rest of your week. Please make sure you go ahead and take care of yourselves. It's a crazy world we're living in today. So
It is. Let's be protected. Share security like a warm little blanket.
that's right. All right, I'll go ahead and end the recording here, I think.